And narrator par excellence. I'm talking of General Ikemwachukwu, the former governor of Imo State and former foreign affairs minister of this country. You're most welcome, sir. Chairman. Now I can proceed, but again, please permit me to pay special recognition to, I'm calling you, just recognizing you. Yes. Not to come and sit down yet. Somebody else will do that. I want to start by thanking everybody here for honoring the invitation to come and honor those who deserve honor in the annals of journalism, the great columnists of yore and columnists of present time. But before the honor is also given out, we're going to talk about security and human rights. Security and human rights, or you know, sometimes they collide. And states and state apparatus have always used the issue of security to tamper with human rights and to deprive people of their human rights. They use security, economic security, and sometimes safety to deprive people of their human rights. They used it before Iraq was invaded, it was used before Vietnam was invaded, it was used before Libya was invaded. Those who did the invasion claimed that their own security was being threatened, and therefore, even when their citizens demonstrated against going ahead with invasion, they did not listen because they thought human rights should not supersede security. And now the entire world is witnessing deprivation of human rights because of health security. Pharmaceuticals and governments all over the world have used the occasion of COVID-19 to deprive the entire world of their human rights. About 76 million people have been thrown out of job in the US. Many shops and companies have closed shop. Many individuals could not travel or not allowed to travel because they had to comply with some dictates of COVID-19 protocols. So the age of consent used to be 18 in Europe and in the US and America generally. But now, because of COVID-19, a 7-year-old child does not need anybody's approval before he or she should submit themselves to vaccination. So for them, the right of the parents to decide what should happen to a child, a minor, had been taken away by governments claiming health security. And of course, you know, right here, there have been so many instances of depriving people of their fundamental rights because those in charge of government and governmental policies believe that because of security, human rights have to bow. We go from there then, ladies and gentlemen, to the issue of honoring our great journalists. I'm sure somebody's going to read their citation, but I can't but talk briefly about our great Latif Jakonde. In his generation, John West. John West was a name that was synonymous with fighting for freedom. Excuse me. It became so pronounced that even his company had to wear the tag of John West. His contemporaries include Aloba, who was Abiodun Aloba, Williams, Ebenezer Williams, Ayokoto Banjo, and so on and so forth. But you will find in his columns the seriousness of his personality, which also reflected in the quality of editorials he wrote in his time. Then the generation of Peter Inauro, of Sad Sam. Sad Sam could regularly be described as the grandfather of satire. I recall that in 1970, Professor Irele wrote about who cares for intelligence. And I think I wrote in the same Sunday Times, the overthrow of the middle class. Then the satirical Sad Sam just said, started talking about intelligence. He said, intelligence is under the carpet, it's under my feet. And that's the kind of style he was using sarcastic satire and staccato style of writing. Whereas Peter Inauro combined seriousness with fun. Our own Sad Sam was all satire and Sapele Boyle style of staccato writing. Of course, Aruna Damu, known as Politicals, in 1972 he published a book and series of articles on the dangers of almajiri. In fact, those were the reasons that drew the attention of Joseph, that they had to look for him, and invited him and asked him to come to Daily Times and be the politics editor. We call him Politicals. In those days, if Gawan did not read Politicals, he will call his press secretary, Ihonde, go and look for a room. Bring the copy, I need to read a room before I go to the meeting. It was so powerful. The generation may not be aware of that. And that's why we have Aruna Damu as one of those to receive this pioneer fellowship of the League of Columnists. Then we have Boyo, the finance columnist. We've had Patrick Sonwo and Effiong Etienne before him, but he brought the issue of economics and finance to the corridor of everybody, so that you understand it. And so its relevance remains forever. We have, of course, Dana Pese. If we talk about satire for Sad Sam, Pese is grandfather of sarcasm. Sarcasm. When you read Pese, you always like looking at him when you are reading him. He portrays his image in everything he writes. And maybe reported, he's probably been one of the most prolific writers in this country. Have I left anybody out? Have I left anybody out?
Yourself.
No, this is not for me. Ladies and gentlemen, Aruna Damu has signaled into me that I'm not supposed to make a speech. I'm just to welcome people. So I bow. The MC...
To an Igbo father and a Fulani mother. He's a retired army officer
and Nigerian politician who, among other positions, has served as Foreign Minister of Nigeria twice and as a senator in the National Assembly delegation for Abia State. Nwachukwu had its early education at the Lady Luck Institute, Yaba, Lagos, and Lagos City College, also in Yaba. He obtained military training at the Nigerian Military Training College, Kaduna, at the Royal Canadian School of Infantry, and at the School of Infantry, Warminster, United Kingdom. He also studied at the Institute of Humanitarian Law, San Remo, Italy, the United Nations Peace Academy, and the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, Kuru, Plateau State. Ike Nwachukwu rose to the rank of Major General prior to his retirement with the Nigerian Army. He held the position of Military Governor of Imo State, where he moved Imo State University, now Abia State University, in Uturu to its permanent site. From 1986 to 1987, he was Minister for Employment, Labor and Productivity, where he founded the National Directorate for Employment to alleviate the problems of unemployment, especially graduate unemployment. Nwachukwu was Minister of Foreign Affairs from December 1987 to December 1989. When he was replaced by Rwanu Lukman, returning to a field military command position, in September 1990, he was reappointed Minister of Foreign Affairs, being replaced in January 1993 by Matthew Umbu during the transition to civilian role. He was active and effective as Foreign Minister, taking a mercantilist approach to diplomacy. He has also held high positions amongst groups and international organizations. Nwachukwu has headed and led several delegations to various international summits and negotiations, and obtained resolutions from the United Nations on behalf of Nigeria. Some of them include addressing the United Nations General Assembly and chairing United Nations special sessions on varying subjects, leading to the organization of African Unity Ministerial Delegation to Conference for Democratization of South Africa, leading Nigerians' negotiations for Agenda 21 and the convention at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. As an Abia State Senator, Nwachukwu served as chairman of two Senate committees, the Senate Committee on Power and Steel and the Senate Committee on Governmental Affairs. Nwachukwu was conferred with several medals and decorations whilst in military service, as well as traditional titles in his present status as a civilian. Nwachukwu has been conferred with several international medals and awards, which include the Grand Commander of Equatorial Guinea, presented by the President of Equatorial Guinea, the Federal Republic of Germany's Grand Cross of Merit, GMCS, the Grand Master of the National Order of the Southern Cross, GMSC, from the President of Brazil, the Diplomatic Medal, DMM, from the President of South Korea, the Grand Cruz de la Order de Mérito Civil de España, GCMC, by King Juan Carlos I of Spain, the Knight Grand Cross of the Order of St. Michael and George, GCMG, awarded by Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom, and the Commander of the Order of Muno COM from Nasimbe Eyadema, President of Togo. Permit me to say a few words. One thing that strikes me the most about Major General Ike Nwachukwu is the fact that he, in his distinguished career as a public servant or in public service, he championed youth empowerment, Pan-African cooperations, most importantly, peace and development. So join me as I welcome on this podium the most distinguished Major General Ike Nwachukwu.
Time was when I didn't need any aid to read. But today at 81, I have to start to my glasses to be able to read my text. Well, that they say is a privilege. I want to begin by thanking you all for inviting me to this occasion, particularly to chair. It is one of the greatest honors that I have received in recent times. And being amongst you, my colleagues, is another immeasurable pleasure. There is no doubt that you are opinion and policy propounders. You help guide the nation and society aright. You impart knowledge, sensitize the general public, and remind our leadership group of their duty when they differ or begin to renege on promises made and positions they earlier held. You hold the light to the truth as you hold governments, institutions, corporate organizations, religious bodies, societies, and individuals are accountable. You remind us all of our responsibilities. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, by doing so, you have therefore undertaken a duty of conscience. I repeat, undertaking a duty of conscience. And it is not easy to be so conscionable and forthright in a climb that could consciously misconceive your motives and can, for that reason only, go all out to comprehensively destroy your integrity, your credibility, and your self-esteem for merely daring to point out shortcomings which, if corrected, will make for the common good. This notwithstanding, you should stay the course, because those that are unable to defend themselves, the misgoverned, the oppressed, the underprivileged, the naive, and the simpleton, all look up to you to voice their pains and to help reach the conscience of those placed in authority over them, to make life bearable for them. To quieten you, attempts will be made to guard free speech, freedom of expression, and free and independent media. It is necessary, therefore, to emphasize that columnists, print and electronic media, are not to be perceived as rivals or antagonists, nor opponents of government, corporate and religious bodies, and indeed individuals who have the clout. Rather, you are to be seen as joint partners in the great task of progressively developing the individual society, corporate, religious bodies, and above all, the Nigerian nation. I am of the opinion, and strongly so, that any attempt to muzzle innovative ideas and constructive criticisms is bad for the development of a healthy society, good governance, and interpersonal relationship. it is indeed a threat to a state polity. It is indeed a threat to a stable polity. I suggest, therefore, that rather than legislate to blunt freedom of speech and expression, leaders at all levels should endeavor to develop the courage to embrace constructive engagement through dialogue on troubling matters, especially those highlighted by you, the media, and well-meaning citizens, corporate or otherwise. With doing so, in a friendly atmosphere, can only guarantee peace and cohesiveness and provide workable solutions which will make things better, particularly the security, the productivity, and the well-being of all. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is therefore wise for us all to listen to the masses whose needs, wants, desires, and pains you bring forth to the attention of those who should assuage them. I appeal that you must not be tired of lifting your voices in strength and wisdom by drawing attention to the cries of the underprivileged and to the deficits in our society as you seek to have them corrected for our common good. Time and again in our country, you find those of you who are at the forefront of bringing to fore the ills of society being rained against by the uninformed, the threatened, those who believe that our country and society can only dance to their tune. They say you must always have two to tango. It is when you blend ideas, blend thoughts, blend opinions to form a policy that you can, in all goodness, begin to address what's wrong in our society and make things better for all. I believe this institute and you columnists of our country, you owe it a duty, and I know that you will not relent on all your efforts to continue to fight for the masses, to fight for the rights of our people, and to build a country that we all, as a people, will be proud of. I thank you.
The moderator, awardees and their families, discussants, distinguished members of the NLC, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, gentlemen of the press, good morning. It is a great honor for me to be here in the midst of some of Nigeria's most gifted, responsible, and respectable columnists who help to shape the views and directions of Nigerians in their columns published weekly or with reasonable frequency in newspapers and magazines over time. Here I am among the elder statesmen, an icon of the Nigerian media, to discuss the critical issue of security and human rights. And I must thank the organizers of this historic event, in particular Professor Anthony Kila, event, for the kind invitation and for honoring some of the Nigeria's leading columnists through public lectures and awards that we are going to witness today. Although I regard this as an opportunity to rub minds with some of the greatest people in the country, I am also not deceiving myself. As some, if not all, of the members of this great audience are far more knowledgeable than my humble self. I'm also neither a lawyer nor registered any work experience with the National Human Rights Commission or any human rights advocacy group. Although I paid my dues as a military officer, having served for over 35 years before my voluntary retirement in February 2019, I still consider myself a novice on this matter. Therefore, my aim here is to stimulate a robust discussion among all, and I'm here to put out some of those salient issues that form the nexus between human rights and freedom of expression and security. However, I have considerable experience in security matters and have a fair understanding of the military and security forces' perception of security, especially as regards to Nigerian context. There is no doubt that this topic's choice is very apt and timely, given the myriads of security challenges, the deployment of the military in almost all the 36 states of the Federation. And there is also in this respect the role of the media and the growing concern about human rights from various quarters. And this is rightly so, because the deployment of the military for internal security operations in the face of such security challenges such as terrorism and insurgency, kidnapping, banditry, and secessionist agitations often provide legitimate excuses for stern measures to enhance security, at times at the expense of people's rights and freedom. The emergence of non-state actors with an extreme violent religious ideology, such as Boko Haram terrorist groups, bandits, and kidnappers, has evoked a pretext for validating the aggressive pursuit of public order and national security in Nigeria, often at the expense of the human rights of the Nigerian citizens. However, sometimes the exercise of human rights, such as the freedom of speech and congregation, could impact national security. A typical example was that of the United States of America, in which the freedom to assemble degenerated into the invasion of the Capitol Hill on 6 January this year, something that would have been thought as a sacrilege years ago. Such an incident could have destabilized national security in many developing countries where citizens' national orientation is dismal and security agencies do not have the adequate work tools to cope with it. Invariably, there is interconnectivity between human rights and security, as they are part of the necessities of human existence and democracy. Imagine having the freedom of expression without safety or security. As noted by the White Ink Institute for Strategic Education and Research Nigeria, WISA, while democracy and human rights principles are meant for the betterment of the society, the limit to which such rights and principles can be protected in the event of a threat to society's security and well-being remains contentious. Accordingly, there is need to balance security considerations and human rights in Nigeria. Invariably, we have to commend the organizers of this important occasion for bringing this knotty issue of human rights and security in our great country to the front burner. This discussion will undoubtedly enhance a better understanding of the intersection between human rights and security in Nigeria and suggest ways forward. Therefore, I look forward to a robust and rewarding interaction and inputs at the end of this presentation. The aim of this presentation, therefore, is just to discuss human rights and security in Nigeria with a view to make recommendations or suggest way forward. And in so doing, I will cover the following: conceptual clarification, the security and human rights infringement in Nigeria, the in-place measures to promote human rights amidst insecurity in Nigeria, freedom of expression and human rights in Nigeria, and then suggest way forward. Now let's start with the conceptual clarification. In a presentation of this nature, it is essential to clarify some key terms in the context of youth, and these are security and human rights. Starting with security. Security has always been one of the state's primary functions. Undoubtedly, as authoritarian states transited into democratic states, the concept of security evolved. In the past, security meant maintaining order and an expression of power and supremacy of the state. Today, democratic states espousing law enforcement models that encourage citizens' participation are premised on the fact and the principle that protection of citizens by law enforcement agencies must be respectful of the institutions, the laws, and human rights. However, the term security, in a simple term, means safety, freedom from danger, fear, or anxiety. It does not mean the absence of conflict, rather the existence of a mechanism for conflict resolution, protection against the breach of the law, and enemy attack. According to McNamara, security in a modernized society means development. It is not military hardware, though it may include it. Security is not a military force, though it may involve it. Security is not a traditional military activity, though it may encompass it. Security is development, and without development, there cannot be security. And Nwaboso sees security as the act of being safe from harm or danger, the defense, protection, and preservation of values, and the absence of threats to acquired values. In the same vein, Adebaki views security as freedom from danger or threat, and the ability of the nation to protect and develop itself, promote its cherished values and legitimate interests, and enhance the well-being of the citizenry. This can be maintained through an effective internal security system. And usually, internal security system of any society is critical because it curbs or mitigates violence and criminal activities in societies. Internal security also ensures the freedom of the people from any criminal disturbances. It ensures the absence of criminal tendencies which can undermine the nation's internal cohesion and corporate existence, and its ability to maintain its core values and meet the legitimate aspiration of the people. Security is also the ability of the government to use all legitimate means at its disposal to protect the people from danger, violence, crime, and fear of crime. It will also involve the use of the police, military, and other security agencies in collaboration with the civil population to ward off all forms of threats to the peaceful coexistence of a nation towards ensuring the preservation of cherished values, people's well-being, and socio-economic development. And doing this, the rights of the people are expected not to be infringed upon. It should also enhance a greater sense of belonging, fairness, safety, and peace. Having looked at security, now let's look at human rights. According to Equality and Human Rights Commission, human rights are the fundamental rights and freedom enjoyed by every person in the world from birth to death. The rights apply regardless of where one comes from, what he or she believes or chooses to live his or her life. These rights are not to be taken away, although they can sometimes be restricted. For example, if a person breaks the law or is of national security interest. But I know a lot of people will ask the question, who determines the national security? So, these fundamental rights are based on shared values like dignity, fairness, equality, respect, and independence, and are defined and protected by law. In Nigeria, instances such rights are enshrined. In Nigeria, there are instances where such rights are enshrined. For instance, in section 33 to 44 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is amended. Human rights are the fundamental features of any true democratic setting because the essence of democracy itself is based on human rights. If there are no human rights and rule of law, I don't think you'll be talking about democracy. Therefore, human rights are mostly viewed as an inalienable right of the people. They are the legal entitlement that every citizen could enjoy without fear of the government or fellow citizens. According to Kalugi, human rights are those rights that cannot be said to have been given to any man or to man by man, but are earned by man for being human being, because these are necessary for his or her continuous happy existence with himself or herself, their fellow human beings, and for participation in a complex society such as ours. Now let's look at human rights and security. The responsibility of any government is essentially the promotion of the welfare and preservation of the safety and security of the citizens. That includes human rights, which is enshrined in the Constitution. This is more so in a democratic society such as ours. However, the meaning and the context of security have changed over time. Unlike in the past, during the Cold War, security tended to be state-centric. But now, it is all-encompassing and put across almost all human endeavors. Globalization has further compounded the problems of states in guaranteeing the safety and security of the citizenry, and there is a clash of Western ideas and ideologies. If you say, the primary responsibility of government is security and the welfare of the people, but now globalization and capitalism has made it very, very difficult for states to live up to those expectations. That is why you have the clash of the Western ideas and ideologies. Western values and ideas have overridden our societal values and those heightened hopes and expectations. With these things are expected to get better, but could not because of neocolonialism and capitalism. You brought in democracy. There are these lofty ideas about democracy, but people are yet to see the dividends of democracy, and sometimes you have the dissatisfactions where you have the non-state actors. Consequently, because of the unmet expectations, non-state actors are involved in violent extremism and have taken out arms to challenge the state and expect it to respect citizens' human rights, because in as far as what they are concerned, it is their right to be involved in these criminal activities. And that is why you have series of excuses given either by the criminal elements or some, ignorant people justifying the acts of, take for instance, bandits. How can you on earth justify, promoting a cause that thrives in murder, pillaging and raping women? Therefore, the states find it very difficult to respond to both based on respect of human rights. Here we have a situation where the system or community does not believe in a particular way of life, yet some citizens believe in it. And typical examples are homosexuality and lesbianism, which the Western world is trying to impose on Nigeria. Some are saying the countries are wrong. On the other side, the terrorists want to impose their religious ideologies. Therefore, the world is in a state of dilemma regarding ideas and ideologies competing with each other. This often leads to war and battles among these ideas. Basically, all these conflicts we are having, they boil down to, yes, there are other, remote and immediate causes, but it boils down to these value systems. So every state is expected to recognize and protect the rights of the citizens. For example, Chapter 4 and Section 33 to 44 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, listed out fundamental human rights. Because of time constraint, we will not list them. Everybody is quite familiar. However, Section 45, subsection 1A and B of the same 99 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, provided for the restriction on and derogation from fundamental rights, in which it states, and I quote, nothing in sections 37, 38, 39, 40, and 41 of the Constitution shall invalidate any law that is reasonably justified in a democratic society. And A also said, in the interest of defense, public safety, public order, public morality, or public health. Now, what constitutes morality to one segment of Nigerian society might not necessarily be the same. So, and B, to protect the rights and freedom of other persons. End of quote. Invariably, this provision categorically made an exception to some of the listed out human rights in certain circumstances, such as when the safety and security of the state are affected or threatened, as pointed out earlier. But like I said, who determines what is the safety of the state? And if you look at it, well, democracy is ruled by the majority because you have voted people to represent you. But the fact remains, it is the elite that determine and are they true representation of the overall Nigerian society. These are the contentious issues that we look forward to a robust discussion after. So this is why we have not gotten it right in this country, as even those who champion the enforcement of the provision of Section 33 to 44 of the Constitution and clamor for the protection of human rights of each other are reluctant and do not want to listen or refer to the provisions of Section 45A2 of the Constitution. What I'm trying to say is that sometimes the might is right. Yes, they will use the constitutional provision, but how do you also determine, the responsibility of states in mitigating some of these security challenges? On the other hand, security is freedom from fear, anxiety, danger, or injury. It connotes the ability of a citizen to go about his or her lawful business without any let or hindrance from anybody. Now, Namara's definition, as pointed out, has also shown that there is no security without development. Neither will there be development without security. However, some people are not interested in anybody going about their local economic activities, but adherence to their way of life. It so happens, you want to go to work, an armed robber will think otherwise. For example, also, the Taliban does not want women to be educated, but they want to rule the Afghan society. How can you do that without educated women? So these contradictions bring about conflicts and strain the harmonious nexus between security and human rights. Apart from the contention about the definition of security, there is also the question of who should provide security, given the contemporary definition of security and its broadness to encompass all aspects of human endeavor, just like I mentioned earlier on. And regardless of the contention, the state, to me, should be the security provider because of its power and legitimacy. Therefore, otherwise we'll end up being like Somalia, everybody will just go to a spectrum. Therefore, it should be understood that the government has a right to go against such criminals and terrorists that infringe on the right of others or jeopardize the nation's security. Moreover, those who came from elsewhere have the interests of their country of origin at heart and will not continue to promote the same here. For example, that is why such international non-governmental organizations have been reporting allegations of human rights abuses in Nigeria, but turns a blind eye to on the excesses of the Western nations' military in Afghanistan, Syria, and other places. Therefore, we need to understand the country's national interest in assisting in balancing security and human rights in Nigeria. Let's even look at the national security strategy. To what extent is it talking is more or less prescriptive, or rather descriptive rather than prescriptive. And apart from that, the issue of coordination, and in addition again, as a nation, if you ask anybody beyond we the people, what is it that Nigeria aspires to? We no longer have the value system that we look forward to. Not even the jollof rice, not even the football. So we have to aspire to certain things. Therefore, and that is the essence of understanding the context of this thing. And that's what I'm saying, is that nobody will come and do it, but we have to do it ourselves, because we know, we understand ourselves better, and we have all that it takes to do that also. Similarly, some basic things need to be available to ensure the balance between security and human rights in this country. For example, respect for human life by all, and it could be demanding for the state, non-state actors, such as violent extremists. Yes, we are demanding the state, we should respect human life, but how will you expect non-state actors like bandits, armed robbers, kidnappers, and terrorists to respect human lives? These are the issues. So in some developed countries, such as the United States of America, good governance make up for the legitimate violations of human rights. Thank God, the chairman has also made reference to good governance. Nevertheless, in our climb, we lack respect for human lives and adherence to the provisions of good governance. Undoubtedly, good governance leads to equal opportunity given to everybody in economic, social, and on political basis. This will in turn lead to accountability, where people, especially those in governance or in a position of authority, account for their actions or inactions. There is no doubt that accountability will reduce corruption, making employment easier, thus reducing unemployment, poverty, and crime in the society. Enhancing national and personal security also. Therefore, there is need to assist in strengthening the structures and social fabrics of the Nigerian society. Human rights and security are the responsibilities of everybody. The federal government, the state government, the local government, and including the family system itself. So the contentious issue is this: is there any society where fundamental rights are absolute? For example, in the United States, there was an incident of bushfire where some farmers refused to be moved out of their environment. But they had to be forcibly relocated for their safety using derogative power of emergency, which is derogatory from the provisions of the American Constitution that justifies such act because they are reasonable and mitigate public emergencies. What I'm trying to say here is that, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that yes, what is happening here is also happening there. But the only difference is that people have absolute confidence and trust in the leadership. Therefore, they respect their own judgment. But here you are neither here. You are between the Red Sea, Deep Sea, and which one, sir? Hard rock. Whichever it is, but you understand what I mean. So they make up for it, because the state can do whatever, in fact, mitigate their rights, and nobody, in fact, your father will even take you to police station, knowing, because he has absolute confidence and trust in the police. Here we know the panacea to kidnapping is refusal to pay ransom. But does the security architecture has what that it takes to rescue your kidnapped father, mother, sister, wife, or daughter? So basically, these are the issues. So another example is the counter-terrorism measures in the Northeast Anti-Terrorism Prevention Act of 2011, which was revised in 2013 or amended. Let's talk about detention of suspects without trial, which is sharply contrasting with the provisions of the Nigerian Constitution as amended. For example, under the Terrorism Prevention Act, where there is a suspicion of someone amassing weapons or improvised explosive devices material, the authority does not need search warrant for such property. Taking someone's life is also derogatory from the Constitution. as a convicted murderer can be executed and it is lawful. It is therefore important to discuss the need to protect and promote human rights even at the midst of security challenges bedeviling this our great nation. Now let's look at security and human rights infringement in Nigeria. I know you are even far more knowledgeable than me. However, we know them. There are also allegations of human rights violations during counter-insurgency and counter-terrorism and other internal security operations that include unlawful killings of civilians which violate the people's right to life. The enactment of Terrorism Prevention Act elicited concern due to the broad and sweeping powers given to the security agencies without strict judicial control. For example, Section 25 of the Terrorism Prevention Act authorizes the National Security Advisor or the Inspector General of Police to order search on any place, person or vehicle without a warrant where he has reason to suspect that any of the terrorism offenses created under the Act was being committed. Furthermore, the NSA or the Inspector General of Police can search, detain, and arrest any person upon reasonable suspicion of the person having committed or about to commit an offense under the Act.
Ecosystem in Nigeria. Mr. Ewere, also a partner at Lawbrief, Attorneys at Law, is an alumnus of University of Lagos, my alma mater, Columbia University, New York, MSc Journalism, and New York University Certificate in Publishing. Mr. Ewere has been pioneering features editor, Sunday editor, The Guardian, publisher, Business Magazine, and managing director, Independent Newspapers Limited, publishers of Daily Independent, Saturday Independent, and Sunday Independent. Mr. Ewere, a member of the board of directors at Independent Newspapers and Unilag Radio TV, is an avid golfer and a former captain of Ikoyi Golf Club. Mr. Ewere is also an international labor organization, certified small business development specialist. Married to Mrs. Ngozi Ewere, a community development activist, Mr. Ewere has 4 children. Please, let's welcome him to the podium. May 24th, 1955, in Cashoughton, United Kingdom, to Lai and Folashade Adelaja Ogunchola. Ms. Obe chairs the Board of Trustees of the Gori Institute, Senegal, and is co-vice chair of the Brussels-based International Crisis Group. In Nigeria, she's a member of the boards of Clean Foundation, formerly the Center for Law Enforcement Education, the Z.O. Dibiazwe Memorial Libraries, and the community-based Ajegunle Community Project in Lagos. Ms. Obe was president of the Civil Liberties Organization, Nigeria's oldest indigenous human rights organization, from 1995 to 2003. A period spanning the despotic rule of General Sani Abacha and Nigeria's return to civilian rule in May 1999. From 1999 to 2001, she chaired the Transition Monitoring Group, an election monitoring democracy building coalition of independent Nigerian NGOs. She represented Nigeria human rights NGOs on the country's Police Service Commission from November 2001 to 2006. Ms. Obe was chair of the steering committee of the World Movement for Democracy from 2004 to April 2008. And ex officio was on the African Democracy Forum Steering Committee. She participated as a member of the International Advisory Group of the Managing Global Insecurity Project of the Brookings Institution and New York and Stanford Universities. Ms. Obe has also been a panelist at the Oslo Forum, the Beijing Forum, and the Women's Forum. She's amazing. Please welcome to the podium.
Editor with CF Press, and she's worked on a few books and publication and magazine. Amina Usman, ladies and gentlemen. And since our keynote speaker is General Usman, feel free, and the compare is another Usman, feel free to accuse us of nepotism. Well, you know. Appearance the same, but we're happy to have qualitative people. Thank you very much for your speech. General Usman flew in this morning and arrived before everybody else on time and squeezed in his speech. When we saw that time was rolling by, it became faster. So thank you very much for that. We have a high level of discussants here today, and I will not throw questions at them because they've listened carefully. But there's something I would like to start with to link to their own personal reflection, which is the connection between security and human rights. Is it a physiological, unavoidable tension, or does it depend on context? I think that might be somewhere to start from. So we start our conversations using a large chunk of it on the stage here. Then as we go ahead, we shall share a bit of a conversation with the public as well. So I shall start with Ayobe.
Because when I was young, I lived in the United Kingdom at the time of what they call the Troubles in Northern Ireland. Now, the United Kingdom was a democracy, they had elections, and so on. But the Catholic citizens of the 6 counties in the Northern Ireland part of the United Kingdom felt that their human rights were being infringed. And in fact, they were being suppressed. And I think that this is where it links in with what Brigadier Usman said about the importance of good governance and respect for human rights. Because once you have that perception of injustice, and actual injustice, because in the end, the British government knew that they had to make some concessions. But it starts off from that. And then you find yourself in a situation of, well, it could be uprising, it could be insurgency. But what was the response of the democracy in the United Kingdom? And this is what I find that when we do listen to lectures because we know that respect for human rights and good governance is the best guarantee against insecurity. But their response was to have a provision which allowed them to intern people on suspicion of being members of the Irish Republican Army or the Provisional Irish Republican Army without trial, just to intern them. They had a provision which of course outlawed the Provisional Irish Republican Army just like that. And on top of it, they had a provision whereby the members of, or those who were seen to be supporting the Provisional Irish Republican Army could not be quoted, or they could not speak on British public media. So that if Sinn Féin, which was perceived as the political wing of the IRA, had said something, the Sinn Féin person could not speak. Instead, they had an actor voicing the words of the Sinn Féin person. I mean, it got to some levels of ridiculousness. But the point that I want to make is that some of these reactions, that our principles are fine and good, and we should hold to them because they prevent us getting into a situation where we have to suddenly jettison them and find ourselves abusing our human rights. And that's what happened there. Now, I think that in comparison, and also with Brigadier Usman had mentioned the United States, we only have to look at the whole Guantanamo Bay, the attempt to keep people from accessing the judicial system of the United States by keeping them in Cuba. So I think that in comparison, definitely we have not been perfect. Definitely we have not been perfect. But I think that we need to understand that there are no easy answers to these questions. And also I would say, just by the way, that whenever I try to make that comparison between the way that the Boko Haram terrorists or suspected terrorists, or you look like a Boko Haram, and therefore we're going to arrest you and lock you up. The way that they were treated during the early 2010s or whatever, is similar to, and it didn't work, it exacerbated the situation. It's similar to what we see going on, particularly in the southeast, with regard to the, you look like an IPOB, you look like we are going to lock you up for being an IPOB. And unfortunately, what we find is that while we were ready to say, oh yes, the terrorists in Boko Haram should be locked up, I mean, we don't agree with their ideology, we now cannot make the connection between that situation in the northeast and the situation in the southeast, and understand that both of them are counterproductive and that a better response needs to be had. I mean, when I see the army getting involved in the wearing of Biafran colors and so on, I feel that the army should play it a bit smarter. They should be able to do something that is less playing into the hands, if I may say so, of those who want to popularize certain ideologies and so on. So I think I will stop there.
Security and human rights.
Yeah, I think I will begin by thanking the General for his very erudite presentation, very detailed and very insightful. Although he tried to make a caveat that it's neither a lawyer or human rights activist.
Now turn out to be more lawyer than
I
those.
think he did a very, very thorough job. Thank you very much, sir. I think, like Professor Kiba is saying, we can look at the context and also the tension issue when we're discussing security and human rights. Of course, definitions are very clear. What is security and what is human rights? The tension there is inbuilt because you have two sections of society, those in governance and those being governed. Those being governed are trying to express themselves, trying to access the benefits of being free, freedom from fear, freedom from want, whether you want to take a narrow or expansive definition of human rights. But those in governance are trying to put everybody in place. They are trying to constrict the space within which those being governed want to express their rights as human beings. As the General pointed out, human rights are not gifts to be given to the people. They are inherent. They are like human, you're born with. But again, as he also said, apparatus that's operating in place at any time or at any geographical position. If you take a government, a governance arrangement that's more tolerant, that's more reflective of the values of the people, it tends to happen that the rights are better tolerated or allowed to express themselves, as in contradistinction to an environment where those who are holding the instruments of power tend to be expressive, so they narrow the space for the expression of rights. In that kind of context, you discover that it's like, from the rulership position, it's like the Pope speaking ex cathedra. They define what should be allowed and what shouldn't be allowed. So in that context, the powerless, the governed, are just submissive or try to resist as much as they can, given the space allowed them by the governing establishment. So I think that tension is there, and that contest is there, and the two try to coexist. Managing them is a function of the society and what is allowed and what is not allowed. I think it's a continuing tension, and we continue like that as far as you have human beings coexisting.
The general made the reference to the nexus between good governance, trust, and the relationship of people with the theme of human rights. He sort of explained to us that whether it's trust in governance, rights being curtailed because they believe it's for their own good. And I think in the sort of situation of the Irish case that Ayobe mentioned, and the Guantanamo Bay situation as well, because of the trust of most of the people in their government, they were able to create a scenario of terrorists against we the people of America, we the people of Britain, and the rest were outsiders, of course, save for the Catholic Irish themselves, who are considered people against state. In our context, how much, and I'll say we can invite you to dwell on this, how much does lack of governance, or lack of good governance, matter in creating trust and the sort of tension between the people seeing the need to curtail their human rights, and then the other thing the general added was the vision himself, when he talked about, we do not
raise issues and point out contradictions. But I think that if we're talking about our security architecture, of course it's an anomaly to have the army on the streets stopping people. It's a confession of massive failure on the part of the Nigerian police force. Or it is a reflection of the fact that there's an assumption that the police cannot handle it, we better bring in the army. And there's a failure to understand that the more you dilute the army by putting them on the streets and searching vehicles because you haven't trained your police up, or your customs or whatever it is, up to the necessary level of integrity to allow them to search vehicles that need to be searched and not simply only search those who fail to pay, that if you have not brought them up to that level of integrity, and then all you do is inject the army into that situation, you may be putting what started out as clean water into an impure bucket of water. But you're not going to make that clean water clean. You may dilute it to some extent, but your real job is, or was, and still remains, to clean the bucket of water that is the general security architecture for we, the non-military part of the population. I know that during the time of military dictatorship, the police wanted to present themselves as, we're also part of you, so we should also be on the Supreme Military Council and be up there and have a commissioner or a governor or two, and all that kind of thing. And even now, they still resist the idea of being termed a police service rather than a police force, because if we don't have force, how are we going to? So there is a problem, but I think that if we, and civil society has done its part when it comes to the issue of police reform, more than a boring broken record on the issue of the input that the civil society has made into the issue of police reform. But I think that if we don't get that right, and it's coming, as we can see, on the anniversary of the End SARS demonstrations, if it's coming, if we don't get that right, then putting the army into that equation only dilutes the effect of the army on the street and also diminishes its capacity when it comes to the job that it needs to be doing against actual terrorists and so on. So I think that we need to, I mean, I don't know if it's civil society or not, because civil society is really people getting together and saying, we think this or we think that.
I use the Hegelian definition, just everybody outside government, just every citizen, yes.
I mean, whoever we are.
Yes.
The point is that we want to affect and impact the actions of those who are in charge of our security. And what I'm saying is that the fundamental thing that we need to do is that we need to tackle that. Yes, you can say that it shouldn't, I mean, there's this idea that if you don't have security, you can't have development. And unfortunately, you have to do both.
Yes.
Because by the time you've achieved the security that you want, and you've brought in your terrorists, insurgents, separatists, or whatever in from the cold, you have to show them something better that will make them stay. Nigeria is not in the same situation as we saw in Sierra Leone or Rwanda, where they had such serious national division that they had to do something more than just say, oh, these are criminals, we're going to treat them as criminals. They had to find some way of dealing with the wrongs that had been committed and yet still bringing the nation together. So I think that we need to multitask.
Yes.
Let me put it like that.
Okay. You got the role of the civil society in these unresolved issues.
Well, like I just said, all the civil society can do is to keep agitating, keep raising the issues to the level of consciousness, in the hope that the authorities who are in charge will be able to take the right decisions. Talking about security and police, one of the things I really see that disturbs me is makes me think whether the police is really interested in security is the number of police personnel that they assign to private citizens. It's worrisome because I try to make myself understand the logic behind it, or the reason behind it. I really can't figure it. If you have some money, you can get 2 or 3 or 4 police people, buy a 4-wheeler Hilux, and every day they'll be driving around you and all over town, just to watch you and your family.
No.
You know, and that's quite a number. At the time when we're talking about security issues, when we don't have enough policemen to police the entire community, you assign a sizable number of the police force to be guarding individuals. What is the logic? I still can't answer that question.
I'll answer it for you.
You know.
Now, you see, it is important that, we must be coherent with ourselves. It's important to realize that, yes, it is a bad sight to see a chunk of public security architecture dedicated to a few people. But more than the moral aspect of it, it's a security issue. It shows that they do not feel safe. And those who can buy security will buy it. Those who can corner it will buy it. It's not a good thing, but it's a symptom of failure. It's the same way where people go to private school, they get private teachers for their children. Those who can afford it. I think rather than being disgusted by some people cornering security, I think we need to talk about a general system that works. Just the same way our hospitals should work, our public schools should work, Japanese schools allow a lot of people in there, so that people will not need to buy private securities like a lot of people getting private teachers. It should be an exception. It's becoming the rule here because security does not accept it. Because the security cannot function the way it's supposed to function.
Prof, I have issues with that analogy.
Yes, and I'm sure you're
because these are personnel trained with public funds.
Yes.
And they're supposed to protect the general populace. Then for a section of that populace to corner them for themselves, I don't see how you're going to justify it.
No, it's wrong, but necessary.
If it is...
Anthony, let me give you an analogy, because I was a member of the Police Service Commission.
Yes, that was what I was pushing.
And of course, they wanted to saddle me with a police escort. But I was president of the Civil Liberties Organization, so that wasn't going to happen. But there came a time when my chairman at the Police Service Commission had in some way or the other said or done something that did not go with what the police wanted or the government wanted. At any rate, they woke up one morning and they took away his police escort. And I remember the then president of the Senate, I can't remember who it was because at that time they were changing on a fairly regular basis. But he expressed his shock. He said, if that is the only thing the man will enjoy. And I thought to myself, so that is our own definition of enjoyment. That you are surrounded. But the point, Anthony, is not that even to enter my compound where I live, there is a security guard, but he's not trained with public.
Oh, okay, he's not trained with public.
And he's a private security, glorified gate man, if we want to be honest.
Yes.
But there he is. That's a separate thing from police
Being taken away.
Yes. Trained with public money for the public at large, being cornered. And whether you call them supernumerary or whatever it is, they should, people who want private security, just as people who want private education or private medical care, they pay for it. Okay? I don't think that we
should accept it. I was playing devil advocate for Teddy where is readers, the rich people.
I hope the angels have neutralized your argument.
We're going to open the floor to 3 interventions.
Which they call VIP protection. And they wear a deep blue beret. And they are paid for their services. And part of what they pay is what the police uses to run its own affairs. So it comes down to budgeting, comes down to understanding why you should have forces in place, comes down to funding for your forces. Unfortunately, our country is yet to prioritize who gets what and why. That's why people talk about the need for a national dialogue as to what is Nigeria? How do we defend Nigeria? What do we need to train our men and women, children, to be able to sustain that definition that we call Nigeria? Not until we get those done, even your military will be unable to truly defend you. Because it's beginning to be blurred to me as an army general what the mission of the Nigerian or the military is. Talk less of the police. So, as we talk about human rights, yes, in the military, we have an order which says, in case of an insurrection or disturbances, you apply what we call minimum force. That minimum force is determined by the commander on the ground. He or she would know what amount of force to apply, beyond which in a normal climb, he or she as a commander could be held responsible for anything that happens beyond the reasonable, and could be court-martialed and dismissed or even jailed. Now, we haven't gotten to that point yet in our system, but we will get there someday. So, is there therefore, question 4, you discuss them, is there therefore a need to address trust deficit in our country? Trust deficit in governance and the people, and so on. So we need to come down and look at those things and be able to now fashion out the way forward. Because if you have a population that has no trust in the leadership, be it corporate or be it government, be it religion, then there is a problem. And unless those problems are fixed, we'll continue to have insurrection, agitation, and so on and so forth.
Of course there's a trust deficit. I mean, although Brigadier General Usman talked about there's trust in the United States and so on, I think that we've seen from the COVID response that there are limits to that trust. That when political ideology takes over, then anything that the side, I mean, in Britain we've had enough of the experts. We don't want to hear from the experts. We want to, so that there are trust deficits in all societies, including our own. And I think because of the social media environment and society and culture in which we are now all living, I think that the government response has been woefully inadequate. It's as though the government believes that, well, we have the NTA, we can get our message out through there, we can control the broadcast stations because they have to have a license from us, so they dare not say too much that we don't like. And then everything else, well, we're still in the middle of Twitter ban. There is an absolute failure to get the message out, complete failure. And you know, thinking that as long as we control NTA, those days are gone. It's not just that people are not only getting their information from inside Nigeria and Nigeria broadcast stations, it's the fact that there's a whole world out there on the internet. And with due respect to the Ministry of Information, they are, I mean,
I think part of the trust issue really is again one point that General Osman alluded to, which is the absence of consensus in respect of a national value system. We don't have a value system that goes across. It's like we're just an aggregation of different values, each contesting with the other. So it's like push and shove, you know, the one that's upper hand at a particular point in point stays on top until it gets down below. So it's like, you know, jigsaw, you know. So when there's no cohesion or consensus about the value system of the society, even the question of what to expect becomes illusionary, and becomes something people define at their own level with their own metrics, you know. So in such an environment, there can be no trust, because what do you got to expect? Your standard is different from my standard. Your measure is different from my measure. What you're aspiring to is different from what I'm aspiring to. And the two may not be the same. The two may collide, you know. So, yes, so in that vacuum, you know, since nature doesn't allow it, it's like civil war, you know, of some sorts. Each contesting with the other, each trying to be supreme over the other. So until we align ourselves with a value system and everybody is singing from the same hymn book, and we're all on the same page, and we're moving in the same direction, it will be difficult. So that's part of the challenge.
Thank you very much.
He was educated at the Native Authority School, Otobi, 1957 to 1959. Government Teachers Training College, Kefi, 1960 to 1962. He later studied mass communication and journalism at the University of Lagos, 1970 to 1973. Thomson Foundation, Cardiff, United Kingdom, 1976, and took a master's in journalism from Columbia University, New York, USA, 1976 to 1977. I will move on to the books he has written. He has written about 9 books. News Watch style book, Fellow Nigerians, Turning Points in the Political History of Nigeria, 1966 to 1999. Nigeria, Dear Nigeria, Babangida, Military Politics and Power in Nigeria. Style, A Guide to Good Writing, The Reporter's Companion, The Columnist's Companion, The Art and Craft of Column Writing, the energy crisis in Nigeria, and In the Service of My Country, selected speeches of Abdullahi Adamu. Pese currently keeps a column in the Guardian newspaper and runs May 5 Media, a media consultancy with Ray Echo, Yakubu Muhammad, and Soji Akinrede. Dr. Pese, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Some young people, they say, oh, I was inspired by you. I read your columns and I to do my exams. And so those of you who are young in this profession, you must commit to it, because to use journalism as a launching pad, you come in, they recognize you, you take a good job and you disappear, has done a lot of damage to the profession itself. There ought to be today a group of elder journalists that young journalists can look up to. I am about the only journalist in my generation who is still writing actively every week in the newspapers. And I would wish I could have some other people with me, but I can't have them. Let me also make two very quick corrections. I'm really very grateful, but I'm not a doctor.
You ought to be one.
I ought to be one, but I am not. So don't put it there in advance. Secondly, Harun Adamu is here. He is my age. I do not want him to live here telling people that I brought my age down in this program. Both of us are 77, I'm not 72. I am a grandfather in journalism, and I want to maintain it that way. So thank you so much indeed. I hope that the next time the awards I've been giving, I will still be alive and to be honored as the oldest columnist in Nigeria.
Adamu.
Dr. Harun Al-Rashid Adamu is graduate of Physics Exeter Academy, Exeter, New Hampshire, USA, 1966. A prep school and Yale University, New Haven, Connecticut, United States of America, 1970. As the founder of Adamu Consulting Limited, he is inspired by the desire to bear his vast experience, contact, and international business network to assist budding enterprise build solid foundations and thriving ones to maintain steady growth. He believes that prompting a synergy between the public and private sector is a salient way to stimulate the growth of the Nigerian economy. He is currently the president of Yale Club of Nigeria. He was the chairman of the Petroleum Trust Fund from 1999 to 2001. His passion for education continues to find expression, especially in funding education institutions, and his relationship with his alma mater. He is the founder of Zaria Academy, a co-educational boarding school in Zaria, Kaduna State.
Because some people who wrote columns under some names, but which today those who are old enough may recall the president of this organization, Tola Deni, was none other than Abba Said. So, he is Abba Said. But Abba Said is to me a brother and friend of over 53 years. As students at the University of Ibadan in 1968, we were both planning, scheming, long before the politics of stomach architecture. We had a candidate in the election for the student leadership in that institution. I came in to study at the University of Ibadan for only one semester from Yale University. And I got to know him, and we went to work for our good friend, late Dayo Abaton, who is now a blessed memory. Now, 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, we again met at the Daily Times. So it's a small world. And I would like to thank the guest speaker for an insightful work, researched, and presentation. We are favored to have somebody who's an insider, knowledgeable, to give us a very wonderful presentation. One thing though, that we should begin to look inwards. Some of us who studied abroad looked at their institutions and thought that they were permanent and would continue to be so. I think we should begin to have a rethink. Lately, certain developments in the world's most established, most respected, and institution that no one in this part of the world thought that could undergo such a volcanic disruption as the United States of America. If one look at what is happening, one should come to the conclusion that we should begin to look at our institutions and see how we can tailor those institutions to assist us. That is, you, the younger ones, how we can have governments that can sustain our relationships amongst our peoples. For once I had thought that we had got a patent for the word coup. That Nigeria has the patent for the word coup. So anybody else who mentions the word coup anywhere must be taken to court, because that is our patent we have. It is ours. But suddenly, in the United States, the word coup is being used in the highest places because that system had been seriously shaken. And we haven't heard the end of the story. That is why we have to begin to look inwards. Copying systems no longer should be our pastime. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much.
Yes, yes, they are here. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Sir Henry Boyle was born into the illustrious royal family of Warri, Delta State on February 9, 1948. He attended the Children's Home School in Ibadan and commenced his secondary education at Igobi College, Yaba, Lagos. He completed his secondary education at Dulwich College, a private boarding school in London. Following this, he graduated with a BSc degree in economics from the University of London in 1973 and a master's degree in Administrative Science from the City University of London in 1974. He returned to Nigeria in 1975. Sir Henry Boyle worked with UAC International in London. On his return to Nigeria, he worked with Kingsway Chemist as sales manager and later contracts manager. He quickly rose to the position of plant coordinator for AJ Seward, a division of UAC and Limited in Oregon, Lagos. Sir Boyle left UAC in 1981 to pursue entrepreneurial interests, leading to his present-day success as the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Allied Techno Systems Limited and Abelcell Limited, which are engaged in manufacturing as well as industrial logistics support. Sir Boyle was a member of the Olu in Council Warri, the highest policy and decision-making body in Warri Kingdom. He was chairman of the May Day Samaritan Foundation, supported by Leopold Stiftung Foundation. He was a member of the fundraising committee of the proposed University of Warri, Obi-Togo. A devout Christian, Sir Boyle passed away suddenly on November 18, 2019. He leaves behind his dear wife, Reverend Mrs. Magdalene Boyle, children and grandchildren. Late Sir Henry Boyle. Thank you for all you've done.
Mommy, turn. You look at.
We have actually told the family that we are actually in the right direction. Because when he passed on, people kept ringing us that there is a vacuum. That they're waiting to hear something and we don't hear anything at all. And so who is actually going to to continue? And I'm an economist too, economic statistician, but not called to journalistic, ventures. So I expressed to them that we don't have the same call. So what we'll do, we'll think about it. So some people actually were serious about it and they said they would like to have his memoirs. So we should put the memoirs together. And I'd like to say that we have almost completed his memoirs and we're hoping to launch. And I think we'd like to inform you so that you advise us as to how to do it. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is Yerere, so that's not Bola Bogusawo. But I also want to refresh our memory. Bola Bogusawo brought serious humor into journalism, serious humor into writing. And I'll just quote one or two. I know you remember, if you taka me, I will double you. Now that was a sense of humor. It was not. It's not just because that wasn't a column. It was a news story. But it was a time Bola Bogusawo was both the acting editor of Daily Times and editor of Sunday Times. He was editing two papers, so two lead papers, both selling about over 1.5 billion copies. And so most good columnists are very good at captioning stories. They are very good at captions. That's why their columns can always be remembered, because they give them good caption. It was that captioning excellence that he brought into Daily Times and wrote, "If you taka me, I will double you." The second thing about Bola, which may humor you, is that Kereku accused the major for looking at his wife's buttocks. And that major was summarily executed. Now here at Bola, Major so will remember that Kereku's wife's bottom is the last bus stop to heaven. Kereku's wife's buttocks is the last bus stop to heaven. That is Bola Bogusawo. Ladies and gentlemen, his pretty daughter is here and his son is here. That's actually the first child.
Bola Bogusawo was born on June 28, 1945 in Odo-Agameji, Ijebu-Ode local government area of Ogun State. He grew up under the guidance and teachings of his headmaster father, Chief Julius Ogunsonwu, and his bookseller mother, Madam Adeola A. Ogunsonwu. The family lived at 19 Orose Street, Imekpe Quarters, Ijebu-Ode. Bolagba attended St. Peter's Primary School in Imo, Ijebu-Ode, and Oluyiwa College, renamed Adeola Odutola College, before going to Ijebu-Ode Grammar School for HSC. Even though he was a science student, he showed evidence of a gifted writer. He came to national reckoning when he won the Milo National Essay Competition, which earned for the school an electric bell, which replaced the age-old physical bell. He continued his formal education at the University of Lagos as a student in the English and Philosophy department. He had an active student life, participating actively in student politics in his university and at national level. He was a brilliant student who graduated top of his class with his second-class upper division's honors degree. He married Remilekun James on the 16th of December 1972 at Holy Cross Cathedral. As a whiz journalist, he continued to share news and fascinating stories through his weekly self-sponsored publication, The Nation. Bolagba evolved to become a serial entrepreneur and completed life's journey as a disciple of Christ. Pastor Ogunsonwu led several roles and responsibilities at the Redeemed Christian Church of God. He is survived by 4 accomplished children, Bola, Bayo, Jide, and Femi, and many grandchildren. The grandfather, your dad was amazing.
And great privilege to be in the midst of such unique people. I would like to thank Chief Tola Adeniyi, who has been my dad's friend and actually witnessed my birth. He remained his friend even until death, and afterwards. We both live in Canada, and every time he sees me, he keeps reminding me of how great my dad was. I'm especially thankful today because he's relevant even after death. And that goes a long way to show that anything we do, we should focus because it can live after us to our children and grandchildren. His name opened doors for me while I was in school. It opened doors for me even when I was in Guardian. It opened doors for me in Canada, and it still opens doors for me today. Thank you so much.
League of Nigerian Columnists for this. Regarding the picture that was wrongly used, I think here's what my father would have said, and he would have actually not obliged because it was a more handsome picture that was used, so he would have used the more handsome picture. And in all, it's a reminder that one of the reasons why the nation is where it is today, and we're having this discussion on security and human rights, is because there's a surplus of poverty and a deficit of humor. Humor and the deficit of humor doesn't just come from the heart, it comes from the tummy. And as we reflect on the discussions we've had today, it's also a reminder of what our father Bolagba Ogunsanwo will have said, that we need to have a surplus of humor in our land. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next awardee is known as LKJ. Lateef Kayode Jakonde was a Nigerian journalist who served as the first civilian governor of Lagos State from 1979 to 83 and later Minister of Works from 1983 to 1998. LKJ was born in the Ekpetedo area of Lagos Island on July 29, 1929. He began his primary education at the Lagos Public School in Owa, Lagos Island, and completed it at Bonham Memorial Methodist School in Port Harcourt. He went on to have his secondary education at King's College, Lagos Island. He then enrolled at the Leisure Grammar School in 1945, where he edited a literary paper called The Quarter Mirror. Jakonde began a career in journalism, first with the Daily Service in 1949, then later joined the Nigerian Tribune in 1953. He was appointed editor-in-chief of the Tribune by the owner, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, in 1956. After serving at the Tribune in 1975, he decided to establish John West, the same name which he had used for his writing for many years. John West's publication began to publish at Lagos News. He later served as the first president of the Nigerian Proprietors Association of Nigeria, NPAN. His service as the governor was open, effective. He was able to implement the cardinal policies of the Unity Party of Nigerian platform. His regime bettered both housing and educational projects that benefited the poor, which included free education. Some of the houses units implemented by the Jakonde regime include low-cost housings, Amuwodofin, Ijaye, Dolphin, Okeafa, Ije, Abesan, Ipanri, Ipaja, Abulenla, Epe, Surulere, Iba, Ikorodu, and Badagry. To fund some of these projects, Jakonde increased the telling rate of the price of the land in affluent areas of Victoria Island, Lekki Peninsula, and processing fee for lottery plots and gaming games. He was focused on raising revenue from some to generate for the benefit of the many. He also completed the construction of general hospitals in Bagada, Ikorodu, and built 20 healthcare centers within the state. He also started the Metro Line project to facilitate mass transit, but the project was halted as his governor ended by the military seized, when the military seized power in December 1983. Following the military takeover in 1983, Alhaji Jakonde was charged, prosecuted, and convicted on treason. He was later pardoned. Alhaji Lateef Jakonde became a senior member of the All Nigerian People's Party and also elected as the first chairman of the Action Party of Nigeria when it was formed in 2006. At his 75th birthday, many prominent personalities were in attendance, and a lot of them celebrated and recognized the greatness of Jakonde. The former governor of Imo State, Ajike Oduwe, also said that Jakonde's life and times epitomized resilience, positivity, audacity, bravery, bravado, and a knack for excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, Alhaji Lateef Jakonde, recognized today for his contribution to thought, clarity, influence, and opinion molding.
Today's award. So I pray God will continue to help you and be with you, be your guardian forever and ever.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Jakonde. He was the editor-in-chief of Daily Service when Samamuka and I were on that staff. In fact, it was Alhaji Alade Odunewu that snatched me away from Peter Naharo in Daily Service, the Daily Times, brought me to Daily Service, and he was the editor, and Lateef Jakonde was our editor-in-chief. So may his soul rest in perfect peace. Amen.
Was snatched away by the military from journalism and is back here in our fold and doing good. Thank you very much, sir, the man with the golden voice.
President, we are
So nobody will listen to me. I will not be quietly. Well, from the way the General Secretary or Secretary General said about us, it looks like I'm here now to make this speech under duress. But I'm doing it with delight. I have a duty to thank all of you who have honored our invitation to be here today.